So now let's look at validity. So reliability is all about, does the measurement tool, does your instrument measure what we think it's supposed to measure every single time? Or what it say it's supposed to measure every single time? But let's step back just a little bit and see and ask yourself, is this test actually measuring what it's supposed to measure? Because if it's reliable, if it's doing it every single time, I better hope that that thing is doing it correctly and is actually measuring what you tell me it's supposed to measure. Is it really measuring what it's supposed to? We have 4 common types of validity that really help us determine whether or not a tool measures what you say it's supposed to measure. We have content validity, we have criterion validity, and within that we have 2 different types, predictive and concurrent. And then we have construct validity, and we have 2 different kinds under there too, convergent and discriminant. And know that a specific tool doesn't need to have all of these. It just needs to have some of these, depending upon what type of measure it is that you're creating and what it is you're intending to measure. So content validity. The property of a test such that the test items sample the universe of items for which the test is designed. Well, if I was measuring mood states, for example, if I asked, okay, do you feel angry, frustrated, happy, sad? If I ask you just those, do you think that that measure would be validly measuring mood states? Most likely not, right? I've only asked about 4 items, 4 mood states, 4 feelings, 4 emotions really. I haven't asked about a bunch of other stuff. What if I'm feeling horny? What if I'm feeling angry or violent or woeful or melancholy? All these different moods, right? So when you think about content validity, have you included everything that can encompass that specific domain or that specific construct? Have you thought of everything? So we can establish content validity by really talking to someone who is an expert in that field. Then we talk to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, somebody who deals with emotions and mood states. They're probably going to know, oh, wait, you haven't asked about so-and-so. You haven't asked about being bewildered or confused. Oh, yeah, I didn't really think about that. See? So not only do you want to think about anger, frustration, happy, sad, melancholy, but bewildered, confused, different things that are really going to make up the entire universe of what it is that you're trying to measure. Do all of these items represent all possible items? Should we be asking more? Should we be asking something else? Talk to an expert. This is how we establish content validity. Criterion validity. This is a type of validity that examines how well a test reflects some criterion that exists either in the present, right now, which is also known as concurrent criterion validity, or in the future, known as predictive criterion validity. So concurrent criterion validity, how well a test outcome is consistent with the criterion that exists now, in the present. So let's say I have a physician, and I have a patient who goes in to see the physician, and the physician diagnoses that person with fibromyalgia. And I've created this questionnaire, the FIQR, the Fibromyalgia Impact Questionnaire. And I give it to the participant. Well, let's say I have a questionnaire, and this questionnaire asks about different pain locations, different symptoms, and this questionnaire is intended to tell me whether or not somebody has fibromyalgia or not. Well, I have from the physician's diagnosis of fibromyalgia. Well, based on this questionnaire, I want to see does this questionnaire have concurrent criterion validity? If that same participant who was just diagnosed by their physician as having fibromyalgia, and then they took this questionnaire while they were in the hospital room with their physician, filling this out maybe before they came in, and I scored it, and that score, the questionnaire, the results of that participant said, hey, look, you have fibromyalgia. Well, we have concurrent criterion validity because the criterion that exists in the present is the current diagnosis that the physician just gave, and the test outcome that is consistent with that diagnosis is my questionnaire that said, yes, ding, 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 you have fibromyalgia. My questionnaire has concurrent criterion validity. Whereas predictive criterion validity is how consistent a test outcome is with the criterion that occurs in the future. So one of the measures that I'm currently using in a longitudinal study with about 100 participants and about 40 research assistants that starts this weekend, one of the tests that they do that looks at aerobic endurance is called the 6-minute walk test. The 6-minute walk test. In this 6-minute walk test, I have participants walk in a large rectangle that measures 50 yards. And I measure how many times do they walk around the course in a matter of 6 minutes. Then I can measure in yardage how far they've traveled. Depending upon a person's age and their gender, we have specific norms. Let's say a participant walked 200 yards in those 6 minutes. And this participant is a female, 65 years old. Well, somebody who's her same age, gender, that's healthy, is walking about 450 yards. Well, the 6-minute walk measures aerobic endurance, but it also is an indicator of physical independence. If somebody cannot travel a certain amount of distance within 6 minutes, it is indicative of the risk that they have of losing physical independence, of becoming physically dependent, which means that they're going to probably have to use a walker, a cane, a wheelchair, something that they're going to become dependent upon physically. So the 6-minute walk test, if I have somebody do this now when they're 65 years old, right now they can walk around fine, but they've only walked around 200 yards within those 6 minutes. While they're physically independent now, 10, 20 years from now, when they're 75, 85 years old, they are at high risk of becoming physically dependent. And if I ask that person 10 or 20 years from now, if they've become physically dependent, where they now need to use a walker or a cane or a wheelchair, that criterion that occurs in the future that says, yes, you've become physically dependent, if the 6-minute walk, which showed that they only walked 200 yards, is consistent with them becoming at high risk of becoming physically dependent. The results of the test now are consistent with what happens in the future, which in this case is being physically dependent. So predictive criterion validity is, does this test predict something that's going to happen in the future? In this case, 6-minute walk test predicted physical dependence in later life, and in fact, this lady did become physically dependent in later life. So the 6-minute walk test has predictive criterion validity. And the last validity measure, construct validity. It's how well a test reflects an underlying idea, such as intelligence or aggression. This is the most difficult source of validity to establish. It's really, really hard to establish this. So one of the ways that we do develop or determine and establish construct validity is we have our participants fill out different questionnaires. And different questionnaires that kind of measure the same stuff. Let's say we're looking at different behaviors and whether or not people tend to be more type A or type B or type C. And we're thinking that, okay, if somebody is type A, they're probably going to be very aggressive, very dominant, very powerful, control freaks. And if somebody is type B, they're probably going to be more passive, quiet, diplomatic. And so when we're trying to develop a questionnaire to see whether or not somebody really is type A or type B, well, we would hope that when we correlate different variables together, let's say aggression and anger and love and sympathy, we would hope to see that anger and aggression are going to be correlated with each other, which is convergent, and that aggression and love will not correlate each other, discriminant. And so as long as we can do these correlations and determine whether or not these different items that we've included in a measure are related to the ones that we think are going to be related, where we see convergent validity, and we see that, hey, wait, these behaviors should not be correlated together because they're completely opposite in terms of spectrum of feelings and emotions, that behaviors that should not be correlated with each other are in fact not correlated with each other, demonstrating discriminant construct validity. So what if you can't establish validity? Although we don't have numbers to help tell us, hey, your measure is not valid, or hey, your measure is valid, unlike we had with reliability, where we have these number thresholds that say you have reliability or you don't have reliability. We really have to talk to an expert, right? If we don't have validity, you kind of have to start all over again, go back to the drawing board, and start over again. Talk to an expert. Look at the criterion that you've selected in terms of now and or in the future. Look at theoretical rationales that make sense, that say, we're looking at aggression or we're looking at behaviors here. We need to look at some of the things that really help us understand these behaviors. Let's look at some theory to help drive why we think these things are going to be correlated and why these two things are not going to be correlated. The last point I want to make when we talk about validity and reliability. A test or measurement tool, an instrument, can be reliable, but it can't be valid. So a test, a measure, an instrument can be reliable, but not valid. But not the other way around. A test cannot be valid unless it is reliable. Because a test does what it's supposed to, then it has to do it consistently for it to work. So think about this example. If I put in front of you a weight scale, and you stood on it, and it measured 130 pounds. You're like, oh, okay. Step off of it, step on it again. It says 130 pounds. Oh. Step on it, step off of it, step on it again, 130 pounds. The scale is reliable. It is consistently weighing you in at 130 pounds. So the test can be reliable. Indeed it is. However, you keep looking at it and you're like, wait, I'm not 130 pounds, I'm 150 pounds. Every time I step on it, though, it tells me that I'm 130. It's reliable, but it's not valid. It's incorrectly measuring my weight. However, if I stepped on that scale and it said 150. Okay, well that's right. Step on it, step off of it, step on it again, 150. Oh, okay. Well, now that scale, a different scale, is valid because it's correctly measuring your weight. And because it's correctly measuring your weight, it's going to consistently measure that. So it's always going to be reliable. So if it's valid, it's going to be reliable. Because if it's measuring what it's supposed to measure, it's going to do it every single time. But not the other way around. You can have a test that's reliable, but not valid. Okay, I just wanted to show you a little something on titanium. So here's the reliability and validity example. So if you click on this, this is the actual article that I actually keep talking about, the Revised Fibromyalgia Impact Questionnaire. This is the article where they developed and validated and talk about the reliability and validity of the Revised Fibromyalgia Impact Questionnaire, the one that I actually use in my research and the one that we've seen throughout this lecture and I referenced. So what I want you to just review this article. You'll notice that there are some parts here that I have highlighted. You're not going to be tested on the content in here because it can be a little over your head. But I want you to just pay attention and read the article. Pay more attention to the highlighted sections because I want you to see how in real life people are applying the concepts of validity and reliability in developing new measurement tools, things that we can use in real life that helps us understand and measure and observe and understand behavior and the things around us in the world. So just go ahead and spend some time, read the article, pay attention, read the blue sections, the highlighted sections. I just want you to see how they're talking about validity, how they're talking about reliability. You'll see some stuff about the mean and the median and skewness. So hopefully this will be a little bit more of an application of stuff that we've been learning about throughout the semester thus far. Okay, again, you're not going to be tested on this stuff, but you're going to see at least how we're talking about and applying some of the stuff that we're learning in this class.